How would Connor's America look? What would it look like?
Well, quite frankly, I think we would deport people who shouldn't be here.
No, I didn't ask about deporting. What does the government look like?
What does the government look like?
Yeah.
I would say, quite frankly, it's under a sort of benevolent leader, such as
Where does he
Franco.
come from?
It could be a kind of aristocratic class. Could be someone
who picks the autocrat?
Frankly, the people. I mean, we could hold a vote on it. Kings were
isn't that democracy?
Well, sure. You can have a vote to get to that state.
And then no more votes afterwards.
Absolutely.
Absolutely a bad thing that there are people like that in America. But what you just saw right there is part of the surrounded debate. Jubilee Media puts them on where they get a whole bunch of people of one ideology and then one person from the other side has to debate them. There it's Mehdi Hasan, who is one of the sharpest people in politics and one of the people best suited to do this sort of debate. He talked to a bunch of people. There you saw him talking to a guy whose name I think is Quite Frankly. And anyway, that dude hates democracy, is an out and out fascist. I'm not labeling him that. He'll get around to labeling it himself. And he's a reminder that far right doesn't even begin to describe a certain subset of the American public. Let's take a look at more.
And if that autocrat kills you and your family, you're fine with that?
Well, I'm not going to be a part of the group that he kills because that's the whole thing.
How do you know?
Carl Schmitt
autocrats tend to kill everyone, even their own supporters.
Carl Schmitt makes this point very well in his work. It's the friend-enemy distinction, right?
Carl Schmitt, the Nazi theoretician.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't care.
Are you a fan of the Nazis?
I don't. I frankly don't care being called a Nazi at all.
I didn't say that. I didn't actually say that. I said, are you a fan of the Nazis?
Well, they persecuted the church a little bit. I'm not a fan of that. But
what about the persecution of the Jews?
Well, I mean, I certainly don't support anyone's human dignity being assaulted. I'm a Catholic.
But you don't condemn Nazi persecution of the Jews?
I think that there was a little bit of persecution.
We may have to rename this show because you're a little bit more than a far right Republican.
I love the side eye from the one who's like, hey, for the rest of us, could you just pretend to have an issue with the Holocaust? That would be people are watching this, quite frankly. You gotta say you don't like the Holocaust. But anyway, before we discuss, I just want to go to one more section because this guy, he is, I don't know if maybe he's enthusiastic and wants to do it. If not, Mehdi Hasan gets him to out himself as everything that they're supposed to be pretending not to be as they try to fundamentally change our system of government. Take a look.
The bits that you disagree with. Can I just be clear on that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I'm more than willing to amend it and include
whenever it's in your favor.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So can Democrats do the same when they're in office?
No, absolutely not.
Because so you don't believe in democracy?
No, I don't. Absolutely not.
How do we get to an autocracy?
I think, quite frankly, that if we are able to enact local leaders.
Who is the we, by the way?
I think, quite frankly, these far right conservatives sitting right around
white
me.
people?
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
well, actually, you guys, I have quite.
Some of the people in this room don't make the cut from what I can see visually.
I think, quite frankly, is one of the strangest verbal tics that I've ever heard. You watch the full thing. He says it 50 times in it. And so that's who he is. I don't believe in democracy. I believe, as fascists always have, you use the tools of democracy, the openness, the freedom of speech, the freedom of association. You then use those tools to get into power, and then you burn it down. And you don't ever leave power. I'm not saying, and Mehdi Hasan doesn't have to make the point, that you can read into the guy that this is what he believes. He just admits that that's what he believes. Democracy is bad, which I want to be very clear. I'm not doing this to point out that some of these guys are fascists or anti-democratic or whatever. They're fully willing to do that. Every one of them, and you can see the other guys that he debated, every one of them sits there and says this and thinks that they're being strong. Aren't I strong? Aren't I alpha when I tell you that I have no faith whatsoever in my ability to convince people that I am right? And a democracy is difficult. You need to convince people. You need to make an argument. I don't want to do that. That's super tough. Instead, I just want some other big, strong guys to grab guns and start shooting the people I disagree with. Please. I don't want to live in a world of different races and different religions and all of that. Please just let me win. And again, he points out multiple things that might result in them being the ones who get to choose. So maybe Catholics will choose. Isn't it convenient that he was born into the good religion? Maybe white people get to choose. Isn't it convenient that he was born into the good race? Maybe us far right conservatives get to choose. Well, isn't that convenient that you're already in the group that gets all the power? And it'll be a benevolent dictator, even though he points out that lots of people will be killed. And so, JR, on one level, quite frankly, he's one guy or whatever. But I think it's a very appealing worldview for a particular sort of broken, pathetic man that, yeah, automatically it'll just be our way. We can amend the Constitution or ignore it, because he says that he wants to amend the Constitution, but he's fine with Trump breaking it even before the amendments or whatever. Democrats just by definition cannot hold power, and eventually people will need to be rounded up. And so Mehdi Hasan did a great job, by the way, but I'm not, other than the entertainment value, I don't really know what the purpose of these are supposed to be. There was never a chance that he was gonna, was he gonna convince the guy that democracy is a good thing? The dude is terrified of democracy. You're not gonna convince him to not be scared anymore.
100%.
What do you think?
Cowards, as you're talking about, coward, scared people who have this weird superiority complex. I said it the minute the election was over. I said, now is the time to stop trying to convince fascists that they're fascists. We already know it. That's why they do fascist things. Stop trying to convince fascists. They'll tell you in more words than what that guy finally just fully admitted. Yes, I am in favor of fascism. Now, the rest of the fascists need to continue to keep covering it up so they can implement it without you pushing back and fighting against it. Because as he pointed out, we're here just to get into power so we can eliminate all those things we call rights that we acted like we were a part of. That's why acting like you're a part of democracy and then flipping on it and then becoming a fascist in the meantime, it's very important to not help them get to that point by going, they can't possibly be fascists because they didn't tell us that they were fascists. It's weird how that works. So this, guys, it was eye-opening for this whole thing. So the debates, I don't know how many people know this. I think debates are the most useless thing ever. There's not debates because we didn't get to a conclusion where someone is right and therefore we should go in that direction because the evidence and the facts behind that argument came to that conclusion. Instead, we're gonna go with the emotional people who want to put guns in their hands and force their ideologies on you. That's what we're dealing with here. These are violent, bloodthirsty, murderous people. They're telling us this as they do the violence, the murder, and the bloodthirst. It's right in front of us. So it's pretty obvious that this is the direction this, and as you said, I guess there's a level of entertainment factor that comes in for people who agree with Mehdi Hasan, who came with facts. But man, if this is not more eye-opening for people who thought they're on the far right, which one of those guys afterwards was saying, I guess I'm not as far right as I thought. Well, maybe you should pay attention to the people that you call your buddies.
Yeah, I think, look, hopefully some of the people that watch it will be like, oh, these guys are pathetic, actually. I don't want to be a part of that. And that's possible, but the issue is, and it's one of the reasons that I've always been very pessimistic about these sorts of debates is that everybody thinks it's about making good points. That basically has nothing to do with it. One of the guys says at one point that white people are natives of America, of North America. And everybody cheered. That doesn't mean anything. That literally doesn't mean anything. And not a single one of them believes that it's true, but they agree with him that white people are good, and that's all that it takes. So they cheer. They just clap. It didn't have to make any logical sense. It didn't need to be reasonable or interesting, clever or funny. Like the partisanship just smooths over so many gaping chasms in the supposed arguments. I do think it's useful to have Mehdi Hasan demonstrate what strong footing a strong progressive can be on in the arguments they make and how their value system works. I think that's valuable. I think it reminds people that, oh yeah, no, there are a lot of fascists in America and we need to be on guard against them. And so I think that's the value I'll take away from it.